Yo, good morning. Good morning to you. It is the 9th of August, 2022. And this is the SitRep for today, the situation report, where I go through interesting news articles that I've found over the past 24 hours and have a look at it from the perspective of prepping. I'm obviously in a hotel room today. I'm at work. That's why I'm doing an early one today. But heaps and heaps of stuff going on. Good morning, Kieran on Instagram. Good to see you again, man. Or, see your words at least. Heaps of stuff going on, including World War III. Almost. That's obviously a pretty important thing. I mean, when we're thinking about prepping, being more preparedness minded or disaster prepping, what can we do? We're often thinking about stuff like, long-term foods storage, pandemics and shit hit the fan sort of threats and things like that. So what do you do if World War III breaks out? Well, there isn't much we can do to prevent that or to stop it, but we can prepare ourselves as best as possible, and we can think about what the flow-on effects of a large-scale war might be. And I'm not saying in any stretch of the imagination that war is definitely going to happen. It's just something that we need to think about, and we probably need to think about that more today than we have in the past. I mean, if you've listened to me before, then you'd know that this is no surprise that we've been building up to this point for quite some time. And I'm certainly not saying that anything in particular has happened today. It's just what I'm reading in the news is concerning me with as far as China is concerned. So let's jump into it. Before I jump into it, I just want to say thank you very much for everyone who's been either watching on Instagram, on YouTube, or listening through whatever podcast medium you decide to use, application that you decide to use. I appreciate it. Appreciate everyone who feels like listening to me dribble on for 15 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, however long this takes. And all the comments and things that people send in. I appreciate you all. Thank you very much. Hopefully this is, there's something in here in my ramblings that is beneficial for your day, and it's not just you listening to some crazy dude go mental over the world. All right, so let's jump into it. China has extended its Taiwan drills past Sunday's deadline, says training under real war conditions now. It is... And the next sort of step up, what we saw was obviously this kicked off from the Pelosi visit, which I think was just a very convenient excuse for China to do what they were going to do anyway, which was kind of surround Taiwan. They've been wanting to do it. They've been signaling that they're going to do it for a long time now. And now they have actually done it. They've, in effect, surrounded Taiwan under the guise of military exercises. So they've gone around, they've encircled Taiwan. They've cut passage to a large extent through the Taiwan Strait, which is already going to have effect on things like supply chains that we're seeing. And they've been firing off a lot of missiles. So, it is a huge, we're here, we're doing what we want, we have the power exercise for China. Anyway, they said that it would end. And surprise, surprise, well, really to nobody's shock or surprise, it has not ended. And it has actually looked like it's ramped up. So what the report's coming out at the moment, there's a number of different reports on this. This one here is saying that they're training under real war conditions now. There's another one here coming out of Zero Hedge that said Taiwan says China's drills are simulating a full attack on the island. So Taiwan's obviously, understandably concerned about what's happening here because they're about to be invaded. They're looking at what's going on and they're watching it very closely. And they're saying, hey, this looks like they're practicing for the invasion. That they're simulating a full attack on the island. And a lot of the videos and things like that I've been seeing, the photographs and things like that I've been seeing, I would pretty much concur. Like, I can't make a very good educated guess on this, on what's going there, not being able to see it. But from what I see from the videos, it does look like they're doing it. I don't know if China will actually do it. It could go either way as far as I'm concerned. They could go in and I'd be, yep, that's unsurprising that they've just gone and taken this chance now. They could also pull back. I think, and they've kind of shown the world like, hey, we have the capacity to do it now. We're not going to do it yet, but when when everything is advantageous as it possibly can be for China, then they will do it. But they're pretty close to doing it. That's for sure. What else we got here? China's military planners are preparing a range of options to take Taiwan. So I'm not sure how people are getting this information. I read this one and I was like, okay, I'm not sure how you would get access to that. I'm sure China would not let that out if they were actually going to do it. So, that's some interesting stuff there that's coming out. This is from CNN, China's drills show Beijing is developing the ability to strangle Taiwan, experts say. China's military exercises show Beijing doesn't need to invade Taiwan to control it. Rather, it can strangle the self-ruled island, cutting it off from the outside world, which is essentially what they've done. That's why I was talking about the fact that they are cutting off the Taiwan Strait as well. This is also a bit of a fuck you to the rest of the world. There is a huge amount of the world's traffic that goes by ocean, that goes by ship, that goes through the Taiwan Strait. So shutting that off, as China's just proved that they can do, is a massive fuck you to the rest of the world. Like, hey, look what we can do here. And pretty concerning stuff. Like, China's really starting to show their power militarily right now. And what's the response from the US? That's the big thing that we need to think about. How is the US responding? Because they're really the only people that can respond. I mean, Japan's Navy might be able to actually respond in some way, but not without being backed up by the US. So it's very interesting here to see what the response from the US is going to be, which at the moment is conspicuously quiet. I'll put it that way. They have done. I'm not saying they're totally quiet. There's been a lot coming out of the US. However, it's just interesting that they haven't been overtly pushing back against this right now, and they're kind of playing the game like, yeah, well, this is just military exercises, like nothing to see here. Just on this too, usually I do this in regions, so I start off in the Pacific, but I've sort of jumped over into Japan because into China, because this is the big news as far as I'm concerned this morning. This is something that we probably need to be watching develop and playing out in our lives, or affecting our lives accordingly, with how we prepare. Thinking again, like I was saying at the top of this little episode here, was what sort of things can we actually do if a larger scale war was to break out? And what we're going to see is what we're going to see anyway, which is shortages of all sorts of things, including food, and a massive inflation across the board. We'll see that anyway in the world. That is a given, but the timeline will now be crunched. As opposed for it to being weeks and months that we could wait for that sort of stuff, it's now going to be, if China were to move, it would be days to weeks that we'd be looking at severe increases and shortages of everything. A little bit of sane news, a little bit of good news though coming out of the US now, and this is coming from Grey Man Briefing, which is an information source that I recommend. I think they're great. They're very US centric, but still very good intelligence source. They said the Secretary of Defense in the US has cancelled a long-planned ICBM, that's an intercontinental ballistic missile, the big bullets, the ones that they can fire a very, very long way. And the US has a series of ICBMs called the Minuteman ICBMs, and they're up to the third iteration, so the newest, latest and greatest one. They've been planning this test for ages. They just cancelled it. The national security spokesman said it was the responsible thing to do to decrease tensions between China and the US as China bombards the waters around Taiwan with 11 ballistic missiles. This here like fills me for hope for the future, in all honesty, when we've got just asinine things going on, like this whole Pelosi thing, which was just a total arrogance and ego-driven thing. All right. I don't know any other way to describe it. Like, the US obviously wants to still show everyone in the world that they are a powerhouse, that they do have control of the world, as they have had for at least the last 50 years. The way they decided to do it was send Pelosi over, which was, in my opinion, this is totally my opinion, the absolute wrong thing to do. There's a million different ways you could have done it. That was the arrogant, egotistical way to do it. So they've done that. All this has happened. Tensions are increasing, and all of a sudden, this sort of news comes out where you've got somebody who actually uses their brain and thinks, hey, is testing our latest and greatest rocket right now the best thing to do for the world? No, we don't need to do that right now, so we're not going to. Underneath what's going on here, I don't know. My conspiracy mind, if I can put my tinfoil hat on for a second, I can also say, why aren't they testing it right now? What's actually going on here? Maybe this has something to do with the ability that the US is rapidly finding that they've been resting on their laurels militarily for a number of years. And a lot of their technologies have actually fallen behind. And a lot of things they assumed that they had, they don't, i.e. hypersonic missiles, for example, where a lot of countries have come out, or not a lot of countries, but a few countries have come out recently, i.e. Russia and China being the two big ones, and said, hey, we've got hypersonic missiles that can beat your missile defenses. And the US was like, yeah, we have them. Do we have them? Shit, we don't. Quick, let's get them going. All right, let's fire one. Oh, it didn't work. Far out. How are we so far behind the eight ball on this? So they're freaking out a little bit, and trying to play catch up. All right, so I did allude to this, that the US was kind of quiet, but they have not been totally quiet, and there's been some things that they've been coming out with. And the way I read this is that they are starting to prep us all to go into war. And in order to go into war, you have to hate the enemy. All right, it's a fundamental thing. You cannot go to war effectively with somebody that you actually think of as a human, that you humanize in some way. Every single war has a huge propaganda campaign to dehumanize the enemy. And I can attest to this. I went through this. I went to Afghanistan and I fought terrorists. I was never fighting human beings. There were never people from a country. There were these evil terrorists that we were fighting. Spoiler alert, they were actually humans. But this is what actually needs to happen. So when we see the paving of this start to come out, this sort of propaganda, that is a big sign that, hey, the government, the mechanism, the cogs are now grinding, and then they're grinding towards war. So this one coming out of Russian propaganda, so take that for what it is. This is from RT News. Out with terrorism, in with China. CIA to focus on Beijing. So the US Central Intelligence Agency will switch its priorities from terrorism activities to opposing China, the Associated Press reports, citing a behind closed doors statement by Deputy Director David Cohen. Again, this sort of information that's flowing out from behind closed doors, that generals are planning these things, that CIA is planning this sort of stuff. I always look at this sort of stuff and go, either we have a serious problem keeping secrets as a world nowadays, or there's reasons for them to put out this information. And there's certainly reasons for them to put out this information. CIA shifting from terrorism to China being public enemy number one. Guess where that's heading? To war! Not a good place. All right. So that's sort of my little snapshot of the impending World War III that's happening in and around Taiwan at the moment. I'll stay in China now with the next sort of stuff. A lot of food stuff going on in the past 24 hours. So a huge feed shortage with pigs in China is happening at the moment. Surprise, surprise, happening everywhere. But China, it's particularly important because China has the largest herd of swine in the world. Unsurprisingly, they're the largest consumer of pig products in the world. So they've got the largest amount of pigs, the largest herd of swine in the world, and having a feed shortage is kind of a big deal because pigs eat anything, including each other. So this story here is feed shortage leads to pig cannibalism in China's economy worsens. So, we're seeing signs that China's economy is starting to falter. This huge behemoth, this leviathan underneath the waters that is moving around, that has been moving the waters of the world, is all of a sudden looking like it is dying and it's about to come up and break surface and crush us all. which is kind of what will happen if China tanks economically, or when China tanks economically. But the big concern for me really is that countries that tank economically or start to have massive downturns, quite often, historically speaking, if we look back on history, what's happened with a power, with a nation or a people that have military might, and then they have economic downturns, they go to war. They start trying to pull in other countries and other things that they can utilize to buoy them up that little bit longer. So that's a statistic that we need to really think about. So China obviously is eyeing Taiwan. Taiwan makes, I think, one of my people who chats me on Instagram sent me a whole heap of information overnight. One of them was the semiconductor situation in the world. And so Taiwan makes 67%. So like 2/3 of the world's semiconductors are coming out of Taiwan. But that's not the whole picture, right? On top of that information, right, is that those semiconductors that are coming out of Taiwan are of a certain quality. Semiconductors aren't semiconductors. You know, that word gets bandied around a lot, but you actually got to dig into this information a little bit more, because it's not just your average run-of-the-mill semiconductors that are coming out of Taiwan. It's your high-end semiconductors. It's the high stuff. It's things that are actually required for complex electronic equipment, complex weaponry and military equipment. So these sort of things coming out of Taiwan. The 8% that I think China makes are the budget end, the budget end of Taiwan. And then there's maybe like 15% that are made in other parts of the world that are kind of your mid-tier, mid-level semiconductors that are chucked in stuff. So if you need a semiconductor for, I don't know, a toaster or some fucking thing that has computer chips nowadays, you're going to get it from China, right? That's where that shit comes from. If you're going to need one for something that requires a little bit of complexity, but not too much, maybe a cheaper TV, or, you know, I can't even think of an example right now, but, you know, that's the rest of the world. But if you need it for the majority of electronics that we use right now, higher end TVs, this sort of thing that I'm talking to you through today, which is, you know, the iPhone or the MacBook, all this sort of stuff requires intensive, high-end semiconductors. The world will be like strangled without them. China is about to take control of that 100%. And they can write their own checks. They can literally write their own checks when they do that. So the economy worsening in China, pigs dying in China, people starving. That's what the end result of that will be. This is all driving us towards war. All right, Japan. Little story in Japan where flash flooding demolishes a road in Japan. Thousands have been evacuated from this flash flooding. Again, weather effects. You know, if you've ever watched me before, I love to throw up the weather effects. I really like, I don't like weather effects, but I really like highlighting these weather effects because they are becoming more frequent and they are becoming more intense, and we do need to plan for it as preppers. This is 100% something you need to plan for. Weather effects, extreme weather effects. India, so moving on to the subcontinent now, we've got India, again, another report about their rice exports. They're having a drought problem, and I talked about this 2 days ago. They've gone from monsoonal floods to apparently droughts in some areas. Rice is a really, really finicky crop as far as a staple food goes in the world. Wheat is kind of almost like a weed. It's basically grass. Rice, though, it needs a lot of input, it needs a lot of water, it needs a lot of sunlight, it needs a lot of human interaction with it. So this is not good. And India is, I believe, by far the largest exporter of rice. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I remember reading this information not too long ago. I'm pretty sure India is the largest exporter of rice, and they're going to have a really shit crop this year. So in 12 months, that's going to be a lot of pain for a lot of people. All right, let's slide over to Middle East now. Let's go to Lebanon. Man, Lebanese are getting smashed at the moment. Obviously, this has been happening for a number of years. 2009, they went through a huge financial crash, a crisis there, runs on banks, no money in the country, inflation increasing, now food shortages. They've had government rationing for a little while now, but it's not been enough. This story in particular, which came from Ice Age Farmer, which is another channel that I recommend people check out, talking about black market food. And I think this is something that's really interesting for a number of reasons. We need to look at this black market food because this is what we could all potentially be heading towards. And if if that's not going to happen, then maybe we should be moving towards black market food and doing our own trade within food within our own local communities. But the problem is when they come out kind of organically like this, they're quite often used in the bad sense, black market food, for extortion and things like that. So people are lining up for hours and hours, like half a day, to get some bread for their family, and it's either not available at the end of that point, or it's too expensive for people to even buy. So this is a huge concern. Watch Lebanon. Watch what's been happening there. I highly recommend. This is another place to check out, like Sri Lanka. So Lebanon, Sri Lanka, definitely two big ones to keep your eye on what's been happening there, so we can actually learn from what's occurred there, because this is what's actually going to happen in other places in the world. Good morning, Björn Ironside. Says, keep it going, mate. The time is now to prep, people. Absolutely. Now is the time to do it. What's real on YouTube says, hi, everyone. Well, hello and good morning to you. Let's go to Africa now, in the DRC, Congo. 36 dead in these anti-UN protests. So these protests are continuing to rage on. The people of Congo do not want the UN there. The UN, they said, have failed them. Or let me put it this way. The information we're getting out is that the riots were about the UN, the people being angry that the UN failed them and stopped slaughter of innocent people, essentially. That's the information we're getting out there. I don't know. I look at this and I'm like, I don't know. People rioting like this for a sustained amount of time, because it's gone for over a week now, over 2 weeks now, and a number of deaths. We have UN. A number of deaths, and the UN is sort of saying, well, yeah, people are dying. We're not sure why. The news reports coming out that the UN soldiers are actually shooting the civilians who are rioting, or attacking, I should say, attacking the UN soldiers, and they're fighting back. But yeah, this is a super interesting situation here, thinking about what the UN peacekeepers, what their mandate is, where they can move into, and what's been happening in the world recently, in the opening up of the UN to be maybe interfering with more and more countries. This is a pretty interesting situation to keep an eye on as well. So this is another one where I'm like, this is worth keeping an eye on, seeing what's happening here and seeing how the people are kind of revolting against the UN. All right, let's jump into Europe now. Russia and Turkey have signed economic roadmap, agreed to trade in rubles. So Turkey's going to start trading in rubles. Again, this whole Turkey situation I find fascinating. People are kind of going like, hey, Turkey, you need to stop doing all your stuff with Russia, and you need to pick a side. And Turkey's like, yeah, totally, we're going to pick a side. Anyway, but I just have to go talk to Putin for a second. Turkey is clearly playing both sides of the map here, and totally getting away with it. Like, there's nothing being pushed back in any reality against Turkey for some reason. It's I think Europe, and especially organizations like NATO, are kind of understanding they really need Turkey, and they really need Turkey on side. So they're allowing Turkey to do a whole heap of stuff, but Turkey does, on the surface at least, from the information that we're getting out, look like they are pushing more and more onto the side of being in bed with Russia. US governments are alarmed over Turkey's deepening ties with Russia. Again, like, there's nothing they're not even threatening Turkey with any sort of sanctions or pushback or anything. They're just saying like, hey, we're very alarmed about this. And Turkey are going, okay, yep, I can see you're alarmed. Mind-boggling. What's going on there? All right, let's see what's else happening in the UK. UK water restrictions to go into effect as heat wave persists. UK gas crisis set to plunge British pound to historic lows. German food banks suffer as former donors are forced to become recipients. So food issues within Germany. This actual piece of information came from one of my sources through Instagram who lives and operates in this area, and sent me this information that the Romanian government is urging citizens to grab their iodine tablets ASAP, as soon as possible. Iodine tablets. This is the sort of stuff that you need in a nuclear fallout. Radiation poisoning. That's what iodine's used for. I quote, I urge everyone, all people up to 40 years of age, to go to the family doctor as soon as possible, from whom they must receive the prescription for potassium iodine pills. Huh. Why would your government all of a sudden be urging you to go and pick up your free iodine tablet pills? That's pretty concerning. Do they know some information that the rest of us don't, or are they just reading the tea leaves and going, this war in Ukraine is looking like it's heading a certain way? Very, very interesting news that's coming out of there. What else happened? Netherlands is to shut down. This I almost can't wrap my head around. Netherlands to shut down 11,200 farms. That's 20% of their farms in order to meet climate goals. It stupefies me, right? This will meet climate goals. I can guarantee it, because if you shut down 20% of your farms, then people will start to starve and die, and then you'll meet your climate targets easily, because you won't have as many people around to utilize all the those nasty greenhouse gases. Plus, no cows farting and burping. And that's the real problem, isn't it? That these animals that have lived on Earth for millions of years are all of a sudden causing greenhouse gases. Björn says, animals, farming, tools, contacts, and experience. Keep awake and filter different news sources. Good night from Sweden. Good night to you, my friend. Hey Daj, hey Dash, hey Da, hey Da. I think that's goodbye, or catch you later. In Swedish. Kieran says, definitely the cow's fault. Yep, we all know. We all knew it was the cow's fault. That was never in contention, right? France is about to experience some milk shortages, or hearing that they're going to have milk shortages. The president of the largest farmers union in France has warned that a shortage of feedstock, another feedstock issue caused by severe drought, may lead to a milk shortage. So, yeah, that's a problem, especially for a country that's known for its cheeses or its other products that come out of milk. So that's going to be an issue. No fodder, no milk. I mean, no fodder, no cows, right? That's a problem. So, what we're seeing here in Europe is a number of issues that are going on. Food supply, mainly food supply this morning. It looks like they are sitting on a food crisis. Because in reality, Europe as a whole doesn't produce a lot, like all of its food needs. There's a certain countries actually do a lot better than other countries, and France is actually one of them. So if France is coming out and saying, hey, we're going to have shortages in a food product, that's a pretty big issue as far as I'm concerned, because there's other countries that don't. They really don't. And they don't even have the capacity to do it anymore. So apart from energy crisis, apart from increased costs within Europe, apart from the looming winter that's coming in at them and people freezing, they're now looking down the barrel of food crisis as well. So again, I cannot stress this enough. If you live in Europe, it doesn't matter where you live in the world. Get out and garden, grow your own food as much as possible, and encourage others to do so around you. All right, let's jump over to the US and wrap this thing up. That's my last place to look at is the Americas. Cuba, there's a Cuban oil depot that's on fire. It's been on fire for 3 days now. There's dead, injured, and missing, but not a lot of information coming out of there. Interesting one though. Cuban oil depot, or depot, or depot. I think everyone calls it a depot. I was trying to think what the Americans call it, but it's probably depot. It is depot, Home Depot, right? Issue. That's another problem with the energy sector going on there. Mama Moose on Instagram says, so basically they want us to die, right? That's where climate change and Agenda 30 comes in, right? Probably. I can't see anything else, any other way that things are going to play out right now. We are going to see a decrease in population. That's the only way that I can see things playing out at the moment. It just depends on what kind of decrease and what kind of timeline we're thinking about. There's a way to decrease our population over a longer time period. In reality, there's a number of factors that increase population, but the fundament of it, the cold hard fact of it is more food equals more people, and we've had more food over the last 50 years than we've ever had access to in known history. And what happens? Surprise, surprise, we've got more humans on the face of the earth. When food dries up, we'll have less humans. That's also a fact. What happens in between those 2 points, though, is very interesting because it depends on timeline, because we could slowly decrease our food and control population in a descent that makes sense. However, we're not heading that way. What we're heading in is a cliff. And that means that there's going to be a whole heap of confounding factors, i.e. like war. War will happen. Conflict, people getting desperate, and riots and protests and demonstration, and maybe even sort of Mad Max shit hits fan type situations where people start going crazy and eating each other. Maybe not eating each other, but you know what I mean. Imagine if we were taught to grow food and collect clean energy at school. Yeah, just imagine that, says Kieran. Look at the cancer rate soar over the last 50 years. Yeah. Here's a fun little fact too. I was looking at some statistics of death rates because I'm always interested in that sort of stuff. The top two were cardiovascular disease by a long way, number one, and the second one was cancer. Very interesting. Very interesting. It was actually comparing it to COVID-19, which was like 13th, 14th, I think, on this list of deaths per day. Yeah. Read into that what you will. Unprecedented flash flooding traps thousands of people in Death Valley in the US. Closing all roads and swallowing cars. More weather effects. And last one, this one really jumped out and caught me. In California, the communist state, the people's state of California. What's happening there? LA City Council rejects a proposal that would require hotels to report vacant rooms and provide homeless individuals a room for the night. That's a good thing, okay? What happened there was a proposal put up that LA should force a private company, a hotel, to report to everyone that, yeah, we got a spare room tonight. And then a homeless person would go in there and I assume would either not pay for it or it would be paid for with taxpayer money, with not our money, I'm not a US citizen, but with US citizens' money, which was stolen off them by the government. Which fucking infuriates and terrifies me. Just the idea that this was even proposed, I think is a crazy idea. But be that as it may, it got rejected as a proposal, but it's still going to go on a ballot for LA residents to vote on, which is fine. You know what? Have your little democracy party, and if you guys decide this is my gripe with democracy. I'm not actually like that pro democracy because a nation of idiots can easily vote for idiotic things. In fact, that's what I now live in, called Australia. And we've seen that happen in many, many democracies quite recently. What I am is a libertarian, and I think people should be free to do as they want. And we can go down that path later. What that actually means. But people being free to do what they want is to have a spare room in a hotel if they decide that it would benefit them to actually charge for that hotel rather than just keep it spare. Anyway, it's going to go to a vote. I'm very interested to see what the people of LA will vote for. Will their bleeding hearts say, yes, put the poor homeless people in the hotels, those evil corporate greedy hotel tycoons who are sitting there with their top hats and their monocles and they're laughing at us. We're going to make all the money and then keep our rooms spare so the poor homeless can be kept in the streets. I'm interested to see how this plays out. I think I know where it's going to play out. I think my personal take on it is I think the LA residents will vote yes and force hotel people to take in homeless people. And then where that goes, well, you want to know where that goes, then I recommend that you read a book called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Hard read. I mean, it's not a hard read. It's a great read, but it's just it's a long read for most people who are used to reading 180 characters. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. I've been going for way too long. No, 36 minutes. It's not that long. But I'm going to wrap it up there. So that's what's happening in the world today. That's my situation report for today, the 9th of August, 2022. As always, if you have any questions, please shoot them through to me. I love to answer your questions. If you've got any news articles that you find interesting, please shoot them through to me because I love the information that's coming in. But that's it for today. So if you get the chance, as always, get out into the garden, get your fingers dirty, start doing those preps, start it now. Like I said at the start of today, again, I think we're another little step closer to a potential world war. I'm not like the sky is falling. I'm just saying like, hey, this is what I'm reading at the moment, that it is getting closer. The tensions are going closer. I can see them easily going back the other way. I can see things decreasing in tension. However, I think it is prudent for us to prepare for a world of less right now, to start doing that. So start working on your preps. Start just working on being a more self-reliant human being. You're never going to regret that. There is never a problem with that, with you becoming a more self-reliant human being. So continue working on that, gang. Continue all the good work that everyone's been doing. Thanks heaps for joining, for watching, for the comments, for everything that you've been sending through. Really appreciate it. And until next time, Semper Paratus.